In a packed courthouse where justice hangs in the balance, a 9-year-old girl with braided hair and a yellow dress stands up from the witness stand. Her small finger trembles as she points directly at a police officer sitting in the defendant's chair. The room falls deadly silent. What she says next will not only shock everyone present, but will expose a web of corruption that reaches the highest levels of the police department. This is not just another courtroom drama. This is the true story of Maya Johnson, a little girl whose courage to speak the truth would shake an entire city to its core and prove that sometimes the most powerful voices come from the smallest people. Her testimony would reveal secrets that powerful people had worked years to hide, and her words would change the lives of everyone in that courtroom forever. But Maya's journey to that witness stand began 3 years earlier, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when she witnessed something that no child should ever see. Maya Johnson pressed her small face against the cold window of her grandmother's apartment, watching raindrops race down the glass. At 6 years old, she was supposed to be taking her afternoon nap, but the sounds from the street below had woken her up. Her grandmother, whom she called Nana, was in the kitchen making sweet potato pie for Sunday dinner, humming an old gospel song that always made Maya feel safe. The apartment building where Maya lived with her Nana sat on Maple Street, right in the heart of the Riverside neighborhood. It was not the fanciest area in town, but it was home. The buildings were old brick structures with fire escapes zigzagging down their faces like metal spider webs. Maya knew every crack in the sidewalk, every stray cat that wandered the alleys, and every neighbor who sat on their stoops in the evenings sharing stories and laughter. From her third-floor window, Maya could see the entire street spread out below her like a living map. There was Mrs. Patterson's flower shop on the corner, where bright yellow sunflowers always seemed to smile at passers-by. Next to it stood Tony's barber shop, where men gathered not just for haircuts, but to debate everything from basketball games to politics. Across the street was the community center where Maya attended after-school programs, its red brick walls covered with colorful murals painted by local teenagers. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, Maya noticed a group of older kids gathered near the alley between two buildings. She recognized some of them from the neighborhood. There was Marcus, who was maybe 16 and always wore a backward baseball cap. Next to him stood his younger brother Jerome, who was only 13 but tried to act much older. Maya had seen these boys around before, but something about the way they were standing made her curious. The rain had been falling steadily for hours, creating small rivers that flowed along the gutters and forming puddles that reflected the gray sky above. Most people had stayed indoors, but these boys seemed unbothered by the weather. They kept looking around nervously, checking their phones, and whispering among themselves in a way that made Maya think they were planning something important. Maya was naturally curious about everything that happened in her neighborhood. Nana always said she had the eyes of a hawk and the memory of an elephant. She noticed things that adults missed and remembered details that others forgot. This afternoon was no different. As she watched the boys from her window, she began to notice a pattern in their behavior. Every few minutes, a car would drive slowly down the street. The boys would straighten up, look at the car carefully, and then relax when it passed by. Maya counted 3 different cars that made them react this way. She wondered what they were waiting for and why they seemed so nervous about ordinary traffic. The apartment felt warm and cozy compared to the cold, wet world outside. Maya could hear Nana moving around in the kitchen, the gentle clinking of dishes, and the soft whoosh of the oven door opening and closing. The smell of cinnamon and sweet potatoes filled the air, mixing with the faint scent of the vanilla candles Nana always kept burning on the windowsills. Maya had lived with her Nana since she was 3 years old, after her mother had to go away for what Nana called adult problems that little girls don't need to worry about. Nana never spoke badly about Maya's mother, but Maya understood that sometimes grown-ups made mistakes and had to face consequences. Nana was everything to Maya now, her guardian, her teacher, her best friend, and her protector all rolled into one gentle, wise woman who seemed to know the answer to every question Maya could think of. As Maya continued watching from the window, she saw a police car turn onto Maple Street. It was moving slowly, just like the other cars that had made the boys nervous. But this time, instead of straightening up and then relaxing, the boys began to scatter. Marcus grabbed something from Jerome and shoved it into his jacket pocket. Jerome looked around frantically before running toward the community center. The other boys melted away in different directions, some ducking into doorways, and others hurrying around corners. Maya found this reaction strange. In her young mind, police officers were supposed to be the good guys, the people who helped when you were in trouble. Nana had taught her that if she was ever lost or scared, she should look for a police officer or go to a fire station where safe adults would help her find her way home. So why were these boys running away from people who were supposed to help them? The police car stopped right in front of Maya's building. From her window, she could see two officers getting out of the car. One was tall and thin with light brown hair, and the other was shorter and stockier with dark hair. They both wore dark blue uniforms and had serious expressions on their faces. The shorter officer spoke into a radio attached to his shoulder, while the taller one looked around the street carefully. Maya watched as the officers began walking toward the alley where the boys had been standing just moments before. They moved with purpose, clearly looking for something or someone specific. The taller officer kept his hand near his belt, where Maya could see various tools and equipment attached to his uniform. What happened next would be burned into Maya's memory forever, replaying in her mind during countless sleepless nights over the next 3 years. As the officers approached the alley, Marcus suddenly emerged from behind a dumpster. He had his hands raised above his head and was walking slowly toward the officers. Even from her third-floor window, Maya could see that he looked scared. The shorter officer immediately drew his weapon and pointed it at Marcus. Maya had never seen a real gun before, and the sight of it made her stomach feel funny. Marcus stopped walking and kept his hands up high, saying something that Maya couldn't hear from her window. The taller officer was shouting instructions, but the rain and the distance made it impossible for Maya to understand the words. Maya pressed her face closer to the window, her breath fogging the glass. She wanted to understand what was happening, but everything seemed to be moving in slow motion and too fast at the same time. Marcus slowly reached into his jacket pocket, the same pocket where Maya had seen him put something earlier. He pulled out a small plastic bag and held it out toward the officers. The shorter officer holstered his weapon and approached Marcus to take the bag. Maya could see them talking, though she couldn't hear the conversation. The taller officer was writing something in a small notebook, occasionally looking up at Marcus and asking questions. After several minutes, they put handcuffs on Marcus and began walking him toward their police car. But then, something unexpected happened that would change everything. As they reached the police car, the shorter officer looked around to make sure no one was watching. He didn't notice the little girl with the keen eyes watching from the third-floor window above. Maya saw him take the plastic bag that Marcus had given them and put it in his pocket instead of placing it in an evidence bag or in the police car where it belonged. Then, the officer walked over to a trash can on the corner and dropped the bag inside, covering it with some newspapers that were lying nearby. He returned to his partner, who was putting Marcus into the back seat of the police car. Neither officer seemed to notice what had just happened, and Maya realized that the taller officer had no idea what his partner had done. Maya's young mind tried to process what she had just witnessed. She knew from watching television shows with Nana that when police officers arrested someone, they were supposed to keep any evidence safe and secure. She had seen enough cop shows to know that evidence was important for proving whether someone had done something wrong or not. So why had this officer thrown away what Marcus had given them? The police car drove away with Marcus in the back seat, leaving Maple Street quiet except for the steady patter of rain. Maya continued staring out the window, her mind racing with questions. She wanted to tell someone what she had seen, but she wasn't sure who would believe her or if what she had witnessed was even important. When Nana called her for dinner an hour later, Maya climbed down from the window seat and walked slowly to the kitchen. The sweet smell of sweet potato pie filled the air, and Nana had set the small table with their best plates and glasses. Nana always made dinner feel special, even on ordinary Tuesday nights. During
That's
dinner,
the one.
Maya found herself unusually quiet. Nana noticed immediately, as she always did when something was bothering her granddaughter. Between bites of cornbread and green beans, Nana gently asked Maya about her day, whether she had finished her homework, and if anything interesting had happened while she was napping. Maya wanted to tell Nana about what she had seen from the window, but something held her back. Maybe it was the fear that she had misunderstood what had happened. Maybe it was the worry that talking about police officers doing something wrong would get her or Nana in trouble. Or maybe it was simply the overwhelming feeling that what she had witnessed was much bigger and more serious than her 6-year-old mind could fully comprehend. Instead, Maya told Nana about her homework and asked questions about the sweet potato pie recipe. Nana smiled and began explaining how her own grandmother had taught her to make the pie when she was just a little older than Maya was now. As Nana talked about family traditions and the importance of passing down recipes from generation to generation, Maya felt some of the tension in her chest begin to ease. After dinner, Maya helped Nana wash the dishes, standing on a small step stool so she could reach the sink. They worked together in comfortable silence, with Nana washing and Maya carefully drying each plate and glass. This was their routine, their special time together at the end of each day. As they finished cleaning up, Maya finally found the courage to ask a question that had been bothering her all evening. She asked Nana what would happen if someone saw a police officer do something wrong. Nana stopped wiping down the counter and looked at Maya with concern. 3 months had passed since that rainy Tuesday afternoon when Maya witnessed the incident from her window. Life in the Riverside neighborhood had continued its normal rhythm, with children playing in the streets, adults hurrying to work, and the familiar sounds of urban life filling the air from morning until night. Maya had started first grade at Jefferson Elementary School, where she was quickly becoming known for her sharp memory and keen observations. Maya had not forgotten what she had seen that day, but she had pushed it to the back of her mind, focusing instead on learning to read, making new friends, and helping Nana around the apartment. The incident felt like a strange dream that had happened to someone else, until the day when everything came rushing back with crystal clarity. It was a bright Friday morning in November when Maya first heard the name Marcus Thompson mentioned on the television news. She was eating breakfast before school, spooning cereal from her favorite bowl with the cartoon characters painted on the sides, when Nana turned up the volume on their small television set that sat on the kitchen counter. The news reporter was a serious-looking woman with short brown hair and a blue jacket, standing in front of the courthouse downtown. Behind her, Maya could see the imposing stone steps and tall columns that made the building look important and intimidating at the same time. The reporter was talking about a young man who had been convicted of drug possession and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Maya's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth when she heard the name Marcus Thompson. She looked up at the television screen, her heart beginning to beat faster as she realized this was the same Marcus she had seen in the alley that day. The television showed a photograph of him, and Maya immediately recognized the backward baseball cap and the young face that had looked so scared when the police officers arrested him. According to the news report, Marcus had been found guilty of possessing illegal drugs with intent to distribute them. The reporter explained that the case had relied heavily on testimony from the arresting officers, who stated that Marcus had voluntarily surrendered a bag of drugs when they approached him for questioning. The judge had given him a harsh sentence because of the amount of drugs involved and because this was supposedly his second offense. Maya felt a cold sensation spread through her chest as she listened to the news report. She knew something was very wrong with what she was hearing. The officers had claimed that Marcus voluntarily gave them the drugs, but Maya had seen one of those officers throw away whatever Marcus had given them. If the drugs had been thrown away, how could they have been used as evidence in the trial? Nana noticed that Maya had stopped eating and was staring at the television with an unusual intensity. She gently asked Maya what was wrong, but Maya found herself unable to form the words to explain what she was thinking. How could she tell her grandmother that she might have witnessed evidence being destroyed in a criminal case? How could she explain that her testimony might be the only thing standing between an innocent young man and 5 years in prison? Maya finished her breakfast in silence, her mind racing with questions and concerns. On the walk to school that morning, she found herself looking around the neighborhood with new eyes. She noticed the community center where Marcus's little brother Jerome still attended after-school programs. She saw Mrs. Thompson hanging laundry in her backyard, and Maya wondered if she knew what had happened to her son. At school that day, Maya had trouble concentrating on her lessons. During math class, while her teacher Mrs. Rodriguez was explaining addition problems on the blackboard, Maya found herself thinking about the sequence of events she had witnessed from her window. She remembered every detail with perfect clarity. The way Marcus had emerged from behind the dumpster, the fear in his body language, the plastic bag changing hands, and, most importantly, the moment when one officer had disposed of what should have been crucial evidence. During lunch, Maya sat with her friend Jessica at their usual table in the cafeteria. Jessica was chattering about the upcoming school play and asking Maya if she wanted to try out for a part, but Maya's thoughts were elsewhere. She kept thinking about Marcus sitting in a prison cell for something that might not have happened the way the court believed it had happened. Maya had learned in her short life that telling the truth was important, but she was also beginning to understand that sometimes telling the truth could be complicated and scary. She thought about what Nana had told her about honesty requiring courage, and she wondered if she was brave enough to do what might be necessary. That afternoon, Maya walked home from school more slowly than usual, taking a detour past the alley where she had seen the arrest take place. The area looked different in the daylight, less mysterious and threatening than it had appeared during the rainy afternoon 3 months earlier. The dumpster was still there, along with the trash can where she had seen the officer dispose of the plastic bag. Maya stood at the entrance to the alley for several minutes, trying to reconcile what she had witnessed with what she had heard on the news that morning. The reporter had made it sound like the case was straightforward, with clear evidence and reliable testimony from law enforcement officers. But Maya knew there was another side to the story that nobody seemed aware of. When Maya arrived home, she found Nana in the living room, sorting through a box of old photographs. Nana looked up with her usual warm smile and asked Maya about her day at school. Maya sat down on the couch next to her grandmother and watched as Nana carefully organized pictures of family members, some of whom Maya recognized, and others who were strangers from before her time. Nana noticed that Maya seemed troubled and gently encouraged her to share what was on her mind. Maya took a deep breath and began to tell her grandmother about the arrest she had witnessed from their window 3 months earlier. She described every detail she could remember, from the nervous behavior of the boys to the final moment when the officer had thrown away what should have been evidence. Nana listened to Maya's story with growing concern and amazement. She asked Maya several questions to make sure she understood exactly what her granddaughter was saying. Nana wanted to know if Maya was certain about what she had seen, if she could identify the officers involved, and if she understood the seriousness of what she was telling her. Maya answered each question carefully and honestly. She was absolutely certain about what she had witnessed. She could describe the officers in detail, and while she might not fully grasp all the legal implications, she understood that an innocent person might be suffering because of what had happened that day. Nana stood up from the couch and began pacing around the small living room, her mind clearly working through the difficult situation they now found themselves facing. She explained to Maya that what she had witnessed was extremely serious, and that they would need to find a way to make sure the right people knew about it. But she also warned Maya that coming forward with this information would not be easy and might put them both in difficult positions. Over the weekend, Nana made several phone calls to people she trusted, trying to figure out the best way to handle Maya's revelation. She spoke with her pastor, Reverend Williams, who had been a community leader for over 20 years and had experience dealing with issues of police misconduct. She also called her sister Dorothy, who worked as a paralegal in a law firm downtown and might know about legal procedures for reporting this kind of information. Both Reverend Williams and Dorothy advised Nana to contact a lawyer who specialized in criminal defense or civil rights cases. They warned her that challenging police testimony was always difficult and that Maya's age might make some people less likely to take her seriously. But they also emphasized that if Maya was telling the truth, she had a moral obligation to come forward. On Monday morning, Nana called in sick to her job at the hospital laundry and made an appointment with a lawyer whose name Dorothy had given her. Attorney Sarah Mitchell worked for a small firm that took cases involving police misconduct and wrongful convictions. Her office was located in an older building downtown, not far from the courthouse where Marcus had been tried and convicted. Attorney Mitchell was a woman in her early 40s with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and glasses that gave her a scholarly appearance. She listened to Maya's story with intense concentration. occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. Maya found herself nervous at first, but Attorney Mitchell's gentle manner and obvious interest in hearing the truth helped her feel more comfortable. After Maya had finished recounting everything she remembered about the arrest, Attorney Mitchell explained the legal situation they were facing. Marcus's conviction was based primarily on the testimony of the two arresting officers and the physical evidence they claimed to have recovered from him. If Maya's testimony was accurate, it meant that the officers had committed perjury during the trial and that Marcus had been wrongfully convicted. Attorney Mitchell warned Nana and Maya that challenging a police officer's testimony was extremely difficult and that they would face significant obstacles. The legal system generally gave great weight to police testimony, and defense attorneys who questioned officers too aggressively sometimes found themselves at a disadvantage in future cases. There was also the possibility that Maya might face intimidation or retaliation for coming forward with her accusations. Despite these warnings, Attorney Mitchell agreed to look into the case further. She explained that the first step would be to file a motion for a new trial based on newly discovered evidence. Maya's testimony could potentially be that evidence, but they would need to present it in a way that was compelling and credible. Over the next several weeks, Attorney Mitchell began investigating Marcus's case in detail. She reviewed all the court transcripts, police reports, and evidence lists from the original trial. She interviewed Marcus in prison, where he maintained his innocence, and provided additional information about what had happened the day he was arrested. Marcus told Attorney Mitchell that he had been carrying a small bag of his grandmother's diabetes medication when the police approached him. His grandmother had asked him to pick up her prescription from the pharmacy, and he was taking it to her apartment when the officers stopped him. When they demanded to know what was in the bag, he had voluntarily shown them the medication, hoping to avoid any trouble. According to Marcus, the officers had looked at the prescription bottle and realized it was legal medication, not illegal drugs. But instead of releasing him, they had arrested him anyway and charged him with drug possession. During the trial, they had testified that he was carrying illegal drugs and had attempted to dispose of them when he saw them approaching. This version of events matched perfectly with what Maya had witnessed from her window. If Marcus had been carrying legal medication rather than illegal drugs, it would explain why the officer had thrown away what Marcus had given them. The officer would have known that the medication could not be used as evidence of drug possession, but he and his partner had already committed to arresting Marcus and needed to fabricate a story to justify their actions. As Attorney Mitchell continued her investigation, she discovered the Christmas lights that decorated the Riverside neighborhood seemed dimmer that year, as if even the holiday decorations could sense the weight of the decision that hung over Maya and her grandmother's small apartment. It had been 6 weeks since Maya first told Attorney Sarah Mitchell about what she had witnessed, and the legal wheels were slowly beginning to turn in ways that would change their lives forever. Maya had just turned 7 years old, and while other children her age were writing letters to Santa Claus and counting down the days until Christmas morning, she was grappling with concepts that most adults would find challenging. The burden of knowing something that could free an innocent man from prison was heavy for such small shoulders to carry. During this time, Maya's understanding of the adult world had expanded in ways that both impressed and concerned her grandmother. Maya asked thoughtful questions about justice, truth, and the difference between what was legal and what was right. She wondered aloud why some people would lie even when telling the truth could help someone who was suffering. These conversations with Nana often lasted late into the evening, with both of them sitting at their small kitchen table under the warm glow of the overhead light. Nana had been doing her own research during these weeks, reading newspaper articles about police misconduct cases and talking with other community members about their experiences with law enforcement. What she learned troubled her deeply. She discovered that the Riverside neighborhood had been the site of numerous questionable arrests over the past 2 years, with young black men like Marcus being disproportionately targeted. Mrs. Thompson, Marcus's mother, lived only 3 blocks away from Maya and Nana's apartment. Nana had known her for years through their church, but they had never been close friends until this situation brought them together. Mrs. Thompson was a hard-working woman who cleaned offices downtown and had raised 3 children as a single mother. She visited Marcus in prison every week, traveling 2 hours each way by bus to reach the facility where he was being held. When Attorney Mitchell arranged for Nana to meet with Mrs. Thompson, the two women sat in Nana's living room sharing tea and tears as they discussed the devastating impact of Marcus's conviction on his family. Mrs. Thompson described how Marcus had been planning to start community college the month after his arrest, how he had been helping care for his younger siblings, and how his imprisonment had created financial hardship for the entire family. Maya listened from her bedroom as the two women talked, and she began to understand that her testimony was about more than just legal procedures or abstract concepts of justice. It was about a real family that was suffering because of lies that had been told in a courtroom. It was about a young man whose dreams and future had been stolen by people who were supposed to protect and serve the community. The pressure on Maya and Nana intensified when strange things began happening around their apartment building. Nana noticed unmarked police cars parked on their street for hours at a time, with officers inside who seemed to be watching their building. Their mail delivery became irregular, with some letters arriving late or not at all. The building's superintendent, Mr. Rodriguez, mentioned to Nana that people had been asking questions about who lived in apartment 3B and what their daily routines were like. These incidents made Nana increasingly concerned about their safety. She began walking Maya to school by different routes each day and asked their neighbor Mrs. Patterson to keep an eye on the apartment when they were away. Nana also started carrying the phone number for Attorney Mitchell with her at all times, in case they needed legal assistance quickly. Despite these pressures, Maya remained determined to tell the truth about what she had witnessed. She had been practicing her testimony with Attorney Mitchell, learning how to speak clearly and confidently about the events of that rainy afternoon. Maya's memory remained sharp and consistent, with every detail of the incident still vivid in her mind even months after it had occurred. Attorney Mitchell explained to Maya that testifying in court would be very different from their practice sessions in her office. There would be many people in the courtroom, including the police officers she would be accusing of wrongdoing. The defense attorneys would ask her difficult questions designed to make her seem confused or unreliable. The judge would be wearing black robes and sitting high above everyone else, which might feel intimidating. To help Maya prepare for this experience, Attorney Mitchell arranged for her to visit an empty courtroom at the courthouse during a weekend when no trials were taking place. Maya walked through the imposing wooden doors and saw the witness stand where she would eventually sit. She practiced speaking into the microphone and learned how to turn toward the jury when answering questions. The courtroom was much larger than Maya had expected, with high ceilings and tall windows that let in streams of natural light. The judge's bench loomed above everything else, making Maya feel very small in comparison. She sat in the witness chair and looked out at the empty seats where spectators would sit, trying to imagine how it would feel when those seats were filled with people watching her every move. During these preparation sessions, Maya also learned about the legal process that would unfold if they decided to move forward with her testimony. Attorney Mitchell explained that they would first file a motion for a new trial based on newly discovered evidence. If the judge granted that motion, there would be a hearing where Maya would testify about what she had seen. If her testimony was believed, Marcus's conviction might be overturned and he could be released from prison. However, Attorney Mitchell was careful to explain that there were no guarantees. The legal system moved slowly and sometimes unpredictably. Even if Maya's testimony was completely truthful and convincing, the judge might decide that it was not sufficient to overturn a conviction that had already been finalized. There was also the possibility that Maya's testimony could lead to a new trial where the outcome might still not favor Marcus. As the new year approached, the decision could no longer be delayed. Attorney Mitchell needed to know whether Maya and Nana were prepared to move forward with filing the motion for a new trial. This decision would set in motion a series of events that could not be undone, and it would require Maya to testify under oath in a public courtroom where her words would be recorded and scrutinized by lawyers, judges, and members of the media. The conversation that would determine their course of action took place on a quiet Sunday evening in January. Maya and Nana sat together on their couch, with the television turned off, and the apartment peaceful except for the soft hum of the heater and the occasional sound of footsteps in the hallway outside their door. Nana asked Maya one final time if she was certain about what she had witnessed from their window. Maya closed her eyes and mentally reviewed the scene once more, seeing every detail with perfect clarity. She described the arrest procedure, the exchange of the plastic bag, and the moment when Officer Bradley had disposed of what should have been evidence. Her account remained consistent with every previous telling. Nana then asked Maya if she understood what testifying would mean for their lives. Maya nodded seriously and explained that she knew some people might be angry with them for challenging the police officer's version of events. She understood that they might face more intimidation and harassment. She also knew that there was no guarantee that her testimony would result in Marcus being freed from prison. Despite all these risks and uncertainties, Maya told her grandmother that she felt they had no choice but to tell the truth. She said that keeping silent would mean that Marcus would continue to suffer for something he had not done, and that other innocent people might be arrested and convicted in similar situations. Maya said that Nana had taught her to do the right thing even when it was difficult, and that this was one of those times when doing the right thing required courage. Nana looked at her 7-year-old granddaughter with a mixture of pride and concern. She saw the determination in Maya's eyes and recognized the moral strength that would carry her through the challenges ahead. Nana also saw the innocence that she was about to sacrifice by exposing Maya to the harsh realities of a legal system that did not always value truth above convenience. That evening, Nana called Attorney Mitchell and informed her that they had decided to move forward with Maya's testimony. Attorney Mitchell thanked them for their courage and warned them once more about the difficult road that lay ahead. She promised to do everything possible to protect Maya during the legal proceedings and to prepare her as thoroughly as possible for the challenges she would face. The next morning, Attorney Mitchell filed a motion for a new trial in Marcus Thompson's case, citing newly discovered evidence in the form of eyewitness testimony that contradicted the police officer's version of events. The motion included a detailed affidavit from Maya describing what she had witnessed from her apartment window on the afternoon of Marcus's arrest. News of the motion spread quickly through the legal community and then to the local media. Within days, reporters were calling Attorney Mitchell's office asking for interviews and more information about the case. The story of a 7-year-old girl challenging police testimony in a drug conviction case was compelling to journalists and the public alike. Maya's name was kept confidential in all court documents and media reports, but people in the Riverside neighborhood began to piece together the identity of the mystery witness. Nana noticed more whispered conversations when she walked through the community, with some people expressing support for Maya's courage and others questioning whether a child's testimony should be trusted over that of police officers. The morning of March 15th arrived gray and drizzly, as if the weather itself was reflecting the somber mood that had settled over Maya and her grandmother as they prepared for the most important day of their lives. Maya had woken up before her alarm clock, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling while listening to the familiar sounds of their neighborhood coming to life outside her window. Nana had been awake even earlier, moving quietly through their small apartment as she prepared breakfast and laid out the special outfit she had bought for Maya to wear to court. It was a navy blue dress with white trim, paired with black shoes that were slightly too big but would have to do. Maya had practiced walking in those shoes for weeks, making sure she would not stumble when she walked to the witness stand. Attorney Sarah Mitchell arrived at their apartment at 7:30 in the morning, carrying a briefcase full of documents and wearing the confident expression of someone who had spent months preparing for this moment. She sat at their kitchen table and reviewed Maya's testimony one final time, asking gentle questions to ensure that Maya's memory remained clear and that she was emotionally ready for what lay ahead. Maya answered each question clearly and calmly, demonstrating the remarkable composure that had impressed everyone who had met her during the preparation process. Her account of the events from that rainy afternoon remained consistent and detailed, with no sign that the passage of time or the pressure of the situation had affected her recollection. The drive to the courthouse took 20 minutes through busy morning traffic, with Maya sitting in the back seat of Attorney Mitchell's car and watching the city pass by outside her window. She noticed people hurrying to work, children walking to school, and the ordinary activities of daily life continuing all around them while she prepared to participate in something that felt anything but ordinary. The courthouse building looked even more imposing in person than it had appeared on television news reports. Its stone steps seemed to stretch upward forever, leading to massive doors that suggested the weight and permanence of the justice system housed within. Maya held tightly to Nana's hand as they climbed those steps, feeling smaller with each ascending level. Inside the courthouse, they passed through metal detectors and were escorted by a court officer to a small room where witnesses waited before being called to testify. The room had beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and uncomfortable chairs that made everything feel sterile and official. Maya sat between Nana and Attorney Mitchell, trying to calm her nerves by focusing on the breathing exercises they had practiced together. Through the closed door, they could hear the muffled sounds of activity in the courtroom where the hearing was taking place. Lawyers were making opening arguments, presenting evidence, and engaging in the formal procedures that would determine whether Maya's testimony would be allowed and whether it would be sufficient to grant Marcus Thompson a new trial. Attorney Mitchell explained that Judge Robert Harrison would first hear arguments about the admissibility of Maya's testimony. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Patricia Fleming, would argue that testimony from a child witness was unreliable and that Maya's account was too vague and distant to contradict the sworn statements of experienced police officers. Judge Harrison was known throughout the legal community as a fair but demanding jurist who insisted on proper procedures and thorough preparation. He had been on the bench for over 15 years and had presided over hundreds of criminal cases, including several involving allegations of police misconduct. His reputation suggested that he would listen carefully to all sides before making his decision. The courtroom was packed with spectators when Maya finally entered through a side door that led directly to the witness area. She had been shielded from seeing the crowd until that moment, but now she found herself facing rows of people who had come to observe this unusual hearing. There were journalists with notebooks and recording devices, community members from the Riverside neighborhood, representatives from police and civil rights organizations, and court officials whose presence was required by law. Maya's eyes immediately found Nana, who was sitting in the front row directly behind Attorney Mitchell's table. Nana smiled at her granddaughter and nodded encouragingly, providing the emotional anchor that Maya needed to steady herself for what was about to happen. In the defendant's section, Maya saw Marcus Thompson for the first time since his arrest almost a year earlier. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that marked his status as a prison inmate, and he looked thinner and older than Maya remembered from that day in the alley. When their eyes met, Marcus mouthed the words, "Thank you," and Maya felt a surge of determination that reminded her why she was there. At the prosecutor's table sat District Attorney Fleming, a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back severely and an expression that suggested she viewed this entire hearing as an unwelcome challenge to the criminal justice system. Next to her were the two police officers whose testimony Maya was preparing to contradict, Officer James Bradley and Officer David Coleman. Officer Bradley looked much as Maya remembered him from that rainy afternoon, though his police uniform had been replaced by a dark suit and tie. He sat with his arms crossed and his jaw set in a firm line, occasionally whispering to Officer Coleman or to one of the lawyers representing the police union. Judge Harrison called the hearing to order and explained the purpose of the proceedings to everyone present. He emphasized that this was not a new trial, but rather a hearing to determine whether newly discovered evidence warranted granting Marcus Thompson a new trial. The burden of proof was on Maya's testimony and Attorney Mitchell's ability to demonstrate that this evidence could have changed the outcome of the original case. Attorney Mitchell stood to present her opening statement, outlining Maya's account of the arrest and explaining how her testimony directly contradicted the police officer's version of events. She described Maya as a reliable and observant witness whose memory of the incident had remained consistent throughout months of preparation and questioning. District Attorney Fleming responded with her own opening statement, arguing that the testimony of a child witness who had been observing from a third-floor window during a rainstorm should not be given equal weight to the sworn statements of trained police officers. She questioned whether a 7-year-old could accurately perceive and remember details from such a distance and under such conditions. The first witnesses called to testify were expert witnesses who spoke about children's ability to serve as reliable witnesses in legal proceedings. Dr. Elizabeth Carter, a child psychologist brought in by Attorney Mitchell, explained that children Maya's age were capable of forming accurate memories and providing truthful testimony, especially when the events they witnessed were significant and emotionally impactful. The prosecution's expert witness, Dr. Michael Stevens, a forensic psychologist who often testified in criminal cases, argued that children were susceptible to suggestion and that their memories could be influenced by repeated questioning and adult expectations. He expressed concern that Maya's testimony had been shaped by months of preparation with attorneys who had a vested interest in a particular outcome. These expert testimonies established the scientific framework for evaluating Maya's credibility, but everyone in the courtroom knew that the real test would come when Maya herself took the witness stand. Judge Harrison announced that Maya would testify after the lunch recess, giving her a few more hours to prepare for the moment that would determine Marcus Thompson's fate. During the lunch break, Maya ate a sandwich that Nana had packed for her, though her stomach was too nervous to appreciate the food. Attorney Mitchell reviewed the questions that would be asked and reminded Maya to speak clearly into the microphone and to take her time answering each question. Most importantly, she reminded Maya to tell the truth exactly as she remembered it, regardless of how anyone else might react. When court resumed after lunch, the courtroom seemed even more crowded than before. Word of the hearing had spread throughout the community, and many people had rearranged their schedules to witness this unprecedented moment when a child would challenge the testimony of police officers in a criminal case. Judge Harrison called Maya to the witness stand, and she walked slowly but steadily across the courtroom floor, her small shoes clicking on the polished wood. A court officer adjusted the microphone to accommodate her height and reminded her to speak loudly enough for everyone to hear. Attorney Mitchell approached the witness stand and began with gentle questions designed to help Maya feel comfortable. She asked Maya to state her name, age, and address, and to describe her relationship with her grandmother. These simple questions allowed Maya to get used to speaking into the microphone and to adjust to being the center of attention in such a formal setting. As Maya answered these preliminary questions, her voice grew stronger and more confident. She sat up straighter in her chair and made eye contact with Attorney Mitchell, demonstrating the poise that had impressed everyone who had worked with her during the preparation process. The real testimony began when Attorney Mitchell asked Maya to describe what she had witnessed from her apartment window on that rainy Tuesday afternoon in November. Maya took a deep breath and began to recount the events that had brought them all to this courtroom, speaking with a clarity and attention to detail that surprised many of the observers who had questioned whether such a young witness could provide reliable testimony. Maya described the group of boys gathered in the alley, their nervous behavior when police cars passed by, and the moment when they scattered as Officer Bradley and Officer Coleman arrived on the scene. She explained how Marcus had emerged from behind the dumpster with his hands raised and how the officers had approached him with their weapons drawn. The courtroom was completely silent as Maya continued her testimony, describing the exchange of the plastic bag and the crucial moment when Officer Bradley had disposed of what should have been evidence. Her account was precise and unwavering, delivered in the clear voice of a child who was absolutely certain about what she had seen. As Maya spoke, she occasionally glanced toward the defense table where Marcus Thompson sat listening to her words with tears in his eyes. She also looked toward the prosecution table, where Officer Bradley was staring at her with an expression that seemed to combine disbelief and concern. Attorney Mitchell's direct examination continued for OV District Attorney Patricia Fleming approached the witness stand with the confident stride of someone who had cross-examined hundreds of witnesses over her 20-year career. She carried herself with an authority that filled the courtroom, and her expression suggested that she was prepared to dismantle Maya's testimony with the systematic precision that had made her reputation as one of the city's most successful prosecutors. Maya watched District Attorney Fleming approach and felt her heart beating faster, but she remembered Attorney Mitchell's advice about staying calm and telling the truth no matter how the questions were asked. Maya kept her hands folded in her lap and maintained eye contact, showing a level of composure that impressed even the court reporter who had seen countless witnesses struggle under cross-examination. District Attorney Fleming began her questioning with deceptively simple inquiries about the distance between Maya's apartment window and the location where the arrest had taken place. She asked Maya to estimate the distance in feet, to describe the weather conditions that day, and to explain exactly what time the incident had occurred. Maya answered each question thoughtfully, acknowledging when she was not certain about specific measurements while maintaining confidence in her core observations. She explained that while she could not measure the exact distance, she had a clear view of the alley from her window and had watched the entire arrest from beginning to end. The prosecutor then focused on the weather conditions, emphasizing that it had been raining heavily and asking whether the rain might have obscured Maya's view or made it difficult to see specific details. Maya admitted that it had been raining, but explained that her window provided shelter and that she had been able to see everything that happened clearly. District Attorney Fleming's questions became more challenging as she tried to suggest that Maya's memory might have been influenced by conversations with adults or by media coverage of the case. She asked Maya whether anyone had told her what to say, whether she had watched news reports about Marcus Thompson's case, and whether she understood the difference between what she actually saw and what she might have imagined. Maya responded to these questions with remarkable clarity for someone her age. She explained that she had told the same story from the very beginning, before she knew it was important, and that no one had coached her about what to say. She described how she had first mentioned the incident to Nana several months after it happened, when she saw the news report about Marcus's conviction. The prosecution's strategy became more apparent as District Attorney Fleming began asking detailed questions about the specific actions Maya claimed to have witnessed. She wanted to know exactly how Officer Bradley had disposed of the plastic bag, where the trash can was located, and whether Maya was certain that what she saw was actually evidence being destroyed rather than an officer disposing of unrelated items. Maya's answers to these questions demonstrated the remarkable consistency that had characterized her testimony throughout the preparation process. She described Officer Bradley looking around to make sure no one was watching before placing the plastic bag in the trash can and covering it with newspapers. She explained that she had seen Marcus hand the bag to the officers just moments earlier and had watched the entire sequence of events unfold. District Attorney Fleming pressed harder, asking Maya whether she might have misunderstood what she was seeing or whether the distance and weather conditions could have led her to draw incorrect conclusions. She suggested that Maya might have seen Officer Bradley disposing of trash or other unrelated items rather than evidence from the arrest. Maya remained firm in her responses, explaining that she had watched the entire arrest from beginning to end and that she was certain about what she had seen. She described the sequence of events in precise detail, from the moment Marcus emerged from behind the dumpster to the moment when the police car drove away with him in custody. As the cross-examination continued, it became clear to observers in the courtroom that Maya's testimony was not going to be easily discredited. Her answers remained consistent and credible, and her demeanor suggested genuine conviction rather than coached responses. Several jurors in the back of the courtroom were taking detailed notes, and Judge Harrison was listening intently to every word. District Attorney Fleming's final line of questioning focused on Maya's motivations for coming forward with her testimony. She asked Maya whether she disliked police officers, whether anyone in her family had been arrested, and whether she understood that her testimony could result in a convicted criminal being released from prison. Maya's answers to these questions revealed the moral clarity that had driven her decision to testify. She explained that she did not dislike police officers, and that she understood they had important jobs to do. She said that she knew her testimony might help Marcus get out of prison, but that her main concern was telling the truth about what she had witnessed. When District Attorney Fleming asked Maya why she had waited so long to come forward with her testimony, Maya provided an answer that resonated throughout the courtroom. She explained that she had been scared and that she had not understood how important her observations were until she learned that someone was in prison for something that might not have happened the way the court believed it had happened. Maya's response to the final question of the cross-examination would become the moment that many observers later identified as the turning point in the hearing. District Attorney Fleming asked Maya whether she was absolutely certain about what she had witnessed given all the questions that had been raised about distance, weather conditions, and the reliability of memory. Maya looked directly at District Attorney Fleming and then turned toward the jury as Attorney Mitchell had taught her to do. In a clear, strong voice that carried throughout the silent courtroom, Maya said that she was absolutely certain about what she had seen. She explained that she had been watching from her window for several minutes before the arrest occurred, and that she had seen every detail clearly. Then, Maya did something that no one in the courtroom expected. She pointed directly at Officer Bradley and said that she had watched him throw away what Marcus had given to the police officers. She described how Officer Bradley had looked around to make sure no one was watching before disposing of the bag, and how he had covered it with newspapers to hide what he was doing. The impact of Maya's direct accusation was immediate and dramatic. Officer Bradley stood up abruptly from his seat at the prosecution table, his face flushed with anger. He began to protest loudly that Maya's testimony was fabricated and that she could not possibly have seen what she claimed to have witnessed from such a distance. Judge Harrison immediately called for order and instructed Officer Bradley to sit down and remain quiet. The outburst had violated courtroom protocol and had created exactly the kind of dramatic moment that prosecutors usually try to avoid during cross-examination. Attorney Mitchell rose from her seat and requested permission to redirect Maya's testimony, focusing on the moments she had just described. Judge Harrison granted the request, and Attorney Mitchell approached the witness stand once more. Under redirect examination, Maya provided even more specific details about Officer Bradley's behavior during and after the arrest. She described his body language, the way he had looked around before disposing of the bag, and the careful manner in which he had covered the evidence with newspapers from the trash can. Maya also testified about something she had not mentioned during her direct examination. She said that after the police car had driven away with Marcus, she had seen Officer Bradley return to the area about an hour later. She had watched from her window as he retrieved something from the trash can where he had disposed of the plastic bag, though she could not see exactly what he had taken. This additional detail suggested that Officer Bradley had returned to collect the evidence he had improperly disposed of, possibly to prevent its discovery by other investigators. The implication was that he had known his actions were wrong and had taken steps to cover up what he had done. When Attorney Mitchell finished her redirect examination, Judge Harrison announced that Maya's testimony was complete. As she stepped down from the witness stand, Maya walked past the prosecution table where Officer Bradley was sitting. For a moment, their eyes met, and Maya saw something in his expression that confirmed what she had suspected all along. He knew that she was telling the truth. Maya returned to her seat next to Nana, who wrapped her arm around her granddaughter's shoulders and whispered words of pride and encouragement. The most difficult part of the hearing was over, but there were still several hours of additional testimony and legal arguments before Judge Harrison would make his decision. The remainder of the hearing included testimony from Marcus Thompson himself, who took the stand to describe his version of the events from that rainy afternoon. Marcus explained that he had been carrying his grandmother's diabetes medication when the police approached him, and that he had voluntarily shown them the prescription bottle when they asked what was in the bag. Marcus testified that he had been confused and frightened when the officers arrested him despite the fact that the medication was legal and properly prescribed. He said that he had not understood what was happening until his trial, when he learned that the officers had claimed he was carrying illegal drugs rather than legitimate medication. Additional witnesses testified about Marcus's character and his lack of any previous involvement with illegal drugs. His high school teachers described him as a responsible student who had been planning to attend community college. His employer testified that Marcus had been a reliable worker who had never shown any signs of drug use or involvement in illegal activities. The hearing concluded with closing arguments from both sides. Attorney Mitchell argued that Maya's testimony provided clear and convincing evidence that Officer Bradley had destroyed evidence and that both officers had committed perjury during Marcus's trial. She emphasized Maya's credibility and the consistency of her account across months of questioning. District Attorney Fleming maintained that Maya's testimony was unreliable due to her age, the distance from which she had observed the events, and the weather conditions that day. She argued that the testimony of trained police officers should be given greater weight than the observations of a child witness. Judge Harrison announced that he would take the matter under advisement and issue his decision within 2 weeks. The hearing was adjourned, and Maya finally allowed herself to feel the exhaustion that had been building throughout the long day. As they left the courthouse that afternoon, Maya and Nana were approached by Marcus Thompson's family members, who thanked them for their courage in coming forward. Mrs. Thompson hugged Maya and told her that she had given their family hope for the first time since Marcus's arrest. 2 weeks later, Judge Harrison issued his decision. He found Maya's testimony to be credible and convincing, and he granted Marcus Thompson's motion for a new trial based on newly discovered evidence. The judge's written opinion praised Maya's courage and noted that her testimony had raised serious questions about the conduct of the arresting officers. The district attorney's office announced that they would not retry Marcus Thompson, effectively ending the case and securing his immediate release from prison. The police department launched an internal investigation into the conduct of officers Bradley and Coleman, and both officers were eventually suspended pending the outcome of criminal charges for perjury and evidence tampering. Maya's brave testimony had not only freed an innocent man from prison but had also exposed a pattern of police misconduct that led to reforms in the department's arrest procedures and evidence handling protocols. Her willingness to speak the truth had vindicated her grandmother's teachings about courage and integrity, and had demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful voices for justice come from the most unexpected sources. The little girl who had witnessed an injustice from her third-floor window had grown into a young woman of remarkable moral courage, proving that truth and justice can prevail when good people find the strength to speak out against wrongdoing, regardless of the personal costs they might face. An hour, covering every aspect of Maya's observations and establishing the reliability of her memory and her ability to perceive events accurately from her third-floor window. Maya's testimony remained consistent with all her previous statements, and her composure never wavered despite the intensity of the situation. When Attorney Mitchell finally announced that she had no further questions, the courtroom prepared for what everyone knew would be the most challenging part of Maya's testimony. District Attorney Fleming stood up to begin her cross-examination, preparing to test Maya's account with the aggressive questioning that was standard procedure in criminal trials. Maya looked toward Nana for encouragement and saw her grandmother's reassuring smile. She straightened her shoulders and prepared to defend the truth she had witnessed from her window, knowing that the next phase of her testimony would determine whether justice would finally be served or whether an innocent man would continue to suffer for crimes he had not committed. The police department issued a statement defending the officers involved in Marcus's arrest and questioning the reliability of witness testimony provided so long after the alleged incident. Police union representatives spoke to reporters about the dangers of Monday morning quarterbacking police procedures and the importance of supporting law enforcement officers in their difficult jobs. As the legal battle intensified around them, Maya continued attending school and trying to maintain some semblance of a normal childhood. Her teachers noticed that she seemed more serious and mature than other children her age, but they were not aware of the role she was playing in a case that was beginning to attract attention far beyond their community. Maya found comfort in her daily routines and in the support of her grandmother, who remained her constant source of strength and guidance. Together, they prepared for the hearing that would determine whether Maya's testimony would be heard in a court of law, where the truth she had witnessed from her third-floor window would finally have a chance to set an innocent man free. The date for the hearing was set for early spring, giving Attorney Mitchell time to prepare Maya's testimony and to gather additional evidence that might support her account of what had happened. Maya spent the winter months knowing that she was carrying a secret that could change everything, and preparing to speak words that would either vindicate her courage or expose her to consequences she could barely imagine. Over several troubling patterns in the arrest records of the two officers involved in Marcus's case. Officer James Bradley, the shorter officer whom Maya had seen dispose of the evidence, had been involved in an unusually high number of drug arrests over the past 2 years. Many of these arrests had followed a similar pattern, with suspects allegedly discarding drugs when they saw police approaching. Officer Bradley's partner, Officer David Coleman, was newer to the force but had quickly developed a reputation for aggressive policing in the Riverside neighborhood. Several community members had complained about his behavior, but their complaints had been dismissed by the police department's Internal Affairs Division. Attorney Mitchell also discovered that the police department had been under pressure from city officials to increase drug arrests in order to justify federal funding for anti-drug programs. Officers who made large numbers of arrests received commendations and were more likely to be promoted, creating an incentive system that encouraged quantity over quality in police work. As the investigation continued, Attorney Mitchell realized that Marcus's case might be part of a larger pattern of misconduct involving multiple officers and dozens of wrongful arrests. Maya's testimony could be the key to exposing this corruption, but it would also make her a target for people who had a lot to lose if the truth came out. The decision about whether to move forward would ultimately rest with Maya and her grandmother. Attorney Mitchell made it clear that she believed Maya was telling the truth and that Marcus deserved a chance to have his conviction overturned. But she also emphasized the personal costs that Maya and Nana might face for speaking out against powerful interests. As winter settled over the Riverside neighborhood, Maya found herself at the center of a moral dilemma that would test everything Nana had taught her about courage, honesty, and standing up for what was right. The little girl who had witnessed an injustice from her third-floor window was about to learn that seeing the truth and speaking the truth were two very different things, and that sometimes doing the right thing required more bravery than she had ever imagined possible. Nana explained that police officers were human beings, just like everyone else, and that sometimes even good people made mistakes. She said that if someone witnessed wrongdoing, it was important to tell the truth, but that it should be done carefully and with the help of trusted adults. Nana emphasized that honesty was one of the most important values a person could have, but that telling the truth sometimes required courage. Maya nodded thoughtfully, absorbing her grandmother's words. She felt a little better knowing that Nana would support her if she ever needed to share something important. But she still wasn't ready to talk about what she had seen from the window that afternoon. That night, as Maya lay in her small bed listening to the rain continue to fall outside her window, she replayed the scene over and over in her mind. She could see Marcus raising his hands, the officer pointing his gun, the exchange of the plastic bag, and, most clearly, the moment when the officer threw the bag away instead of keeping it as evidence. Maya didn't know it then, but that rainy Tuesday afternoon had set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead her to a courtroom witness stand 3 years later. The image of that officer discarding what should have been evidence was now permanently etched in her memory, waiting for the right moment to emerge and change everything. As sleep finally began to take hold, Maya made a silent promise to herself. If the time ever came when her testimony could help someone who had been wrongly accused or punish someone who had done something wrong, she would find the courage to speak the truth, no matter how scary it might be. The rain continued through the night, washing the streets clean and carrying away the physical evidence of what had happened. But it could not wash away what Maya had seen, and it could not erase the memory that would one day bring justice to light in ways that no one could have imagined.